So the advantage of this is by going live on YouTube, the programs will be immediately available. So for instance, coming up next Sunday, we have Aya Santa Chita visiting, and then we have a panel Monday night. And if you're unable to attend either, it will be on the YouTube channel right away. So heretofore, we've had to take the recordings, upload each one individually, and so it's very easy to get behind. So Annie, how would you like to be the Umse this morning?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I'm all ready. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all knowingness. May they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all knowingness. May they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. All sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all knowingness. May they have happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. As earth and the other elements, together with space, eternally provide sustenance in many ways for the countless sentient beings, so may I become sustenance in every way for sentient beings to the limits of space until all have attained nirvana. As the Sugatas of old gave birth to the bodhicitta and progressively established themselves in the training of a bodhisattva, so I too, for the benefit of beings, shall give birth to that bodhicitta and progressively train myself in that discipline. At this moment, my life has become fruitful. I have realized my human life. Today, I am born into the family of the Buddhas. Now I am a child of the Buddhas. From now on, I will forthrightly perform the actions befitting my family. I will act so as not to degrade the faultlessness and discipline of my family. Just as with a blind man finding a jewel in a heap of dust, thus somehow bodhicitta has been born in me. This is the supreme Amrita which destroys death, the inexhaustible treasure which removes the world's poverty. It is the supreme medicine which cures the world's sickness, the tree which provides rest for beings weary of wandering on the paths of existence. It is the universal bridge on which all travelers may pass over the lower realms, the rising moon of mind which dispels the torment of the kleshas. It is the great sun which puts an end to the obscurity of ignorance, the pure butter which comes of churning the milk of the holy Dharma. For travelers wandering the paths of existence, seeking happiness from objects of enjoyment, it is supreme bliss near at hand, the great feast which satisfies sentient beings. Today witnessed by all the protectors, I have welcomed the sentient beings and Sugatas. Devas and Asuras rejoice. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Welcome, everyone. So we have completed the 7 points of mind training as assembled and taught by Geshe Chokawa, which originally come from teacher to teacher from Atisha. And so now we're looking at some supplementary trainings that have been also passed down with the nuances of different teachers applying this training for their students personally. So for instance, I first learned Tonglen at Gampo Abbey with the Venerable Annie Pema children and have followed her instructions and her development of those instructions as my method of understanding Tonglen. But there are actually several methods. And the training that we're going to look at this morning is it's not even mentioned who the teacher was and who the student was who was compiling it, but the title is Taking Afflictions onto the Path. And the author says these are this is how my teacher taught it, without mentioning who the teacher was. So again, we're talking literally about several thousand years of this teaching being diligently practiced and passed teacher to student, teacher to student. So I'm going to go over the steps of this particular teaching, and then we'll practice this teaching, and then have a short time for discussion. And so this teaching begins with, all right, we're talking about the afflictions, and the afflictions can be condensed into attachment, aggression, or anger or hatred, and ignorance, if we were going to take the broadest view. So it says start with attachment. And anytime you observe yourself having an attachment, and this is a wonderful instruction for our mindfulness, because it's an attachment either to an object or to an internal experience. So an external object or an internal experience, whenever you experience attachment, take that. So an external object could be any of the addictions that plague our friends and family as well as ourselves. For me, it's very easy to think about sugar, but, we think of all the people who are dying from opioids. We think of all the people who are struggling with alcohol, all of the struggle and sorrow in the world from the internal experiences of taking sides, attachment to a tribe, so we could say our whiteness or our blackness or our brownness, attachment to a political view, communist, socialist, Democrat, Republican, that quality of righteousness that arises is a sign of attachment. Even in our relationships, our side of a persisting habitual pattern where we're clearly right and they're clearly wrong. So it's a very broad and interesting definition of internal experience or external object. And not to worry about choosing, just since we're all in the desire realm and subject to attachment, whichever one arises in this moment, then that's the one to practice in this moment. So then contemplate, all right, we have different attachments arising, and contemplate what are the consequences of maintaining this attachment. If we maintain this attachment, we will be born over and over and over again in the desire realm. And the interesting thing about karma is that it's a propensity, which means if I, for instance, being attached to sugar, if I maintain that attachment and develop it, the propensity in the next life is to be born into a family and a culture that supports indulgence or supports the increase. So, for instance, if I continue with sugar, I might be born into a time, place, and planet where everyone is obese and everyone indulges in sugar moment to moment. Or if I indulge in one of the examples in the text was if I indulge in killing, like for instance, if I'm killing mice or spiders, and if I become used to and accustomed to small instances of killing in this life, I might be born into a time and culture and family of hunters, so that attachment leads to more and more dire circumstances and dire residence of, what is the expression, digging the hole deeper and deeper and encouraging that. So by indulging in it, I'm moving further and further away from enlightenment. So what are the consequences of taking that affliction onto the path? If I take that affliction onto the path and transform it, not only am I not continuing the pattern and breaking the pattern, but the wisdom mind that it takes to break the pattern then leads me closer and closer to enlightenment, closer and closer to the conditions for Buddhahood. So, okay, so we're looking what arises in our own lives, and then really just taking some time to consider, what does this mean? And give rise to the aspiration to break the pattern, give rise to the aspiration for coming closer to enlightenment for ourselves, but also for all the suffering beings. So then the next instruction is, all right, your aspiration is to benefit sentient beings. Then consider your enemies and really take on the affliction of their attachments. So I might be attached to seeing myself as a liberal, for instance. And so I might see them as conservatives. And looking at my own attachment to that tribe, to that set of beliefs, taking on, now we're not taking on the beliefs, we're not taking on issues of justice or injustice, we're taking down on the shutting down, the closing of our hearts and minds, the closing of our ears due to attachment. So we're taking on all the attachment to a tribe or side of our enemies. And we're not interpreting the enemies, in any heavy way. We're just saying, oh, okay, if I see myself on this side, and I see the attachment I have to this side and how closed-minded I can become, then I'm taking on the attachment and closed-minded of all the accumulated beings on the other side. So just breathing that in, feeling the weight of that, and it's easy to envision that in our country, let's say, but we can expand it to wherever there are political sides in any country, just taking on that attachment to a side, to a view, in sense of shutting down, closed-mindedness, no capacity to listen or open. So then we're going to see if we can make it even larger, and taking on ourselves the bigger sense of attachment in general and the propensity in general of all sentient beings to be attached, any kind of attachment. So this opening to the welfare of others, using our own experience to open to the welfare of others, seeing the pain that our attachment causes us, seeing the consequences of our attachment as we look forward to life after life, increasing attachment, moving away from enlightenment. We make it bigger and bigger and bigger till it's the attachment of all varieties, internal objects, external objects of all sentient beings, until the attachment, and this is the direct language, your own attachment becomes so great as to be unfathomable. So yes, taking on the attachment of all sentient beings, every kind of attachment, we can't even imagine how large that is, but we're absolutely breathing that in, and we're seeing all sentient beings free from attachment. Now here is where the instructions get very pointed and very interesting. So here we are, it's almost, we can't even imagine it. We can certainly imagine others free of attachment, but it's as tall as Mount Meru, which is, the highest mountain in the Tibetan cosmology, beyond our imagination, heavier, bigger, whatever. Heap more attachment on. So it's bigger, but heap more on. And then reflect. And I'm going to read the instructions, the language specifically. Attachment is by nature mental. What we were doing was in our imaginations. First, giving rise to the experience of attachment, whether external or internal, but giving rise to that experience was mental. Imagining the experiences of others and taking that on, mental. Apart from the mind, there is no attachment, not even an atom's breadth. So here we have this weight. We can imagine that it's beyond belief. We can imagine, even, attachments that we've even forgotten. You were heaping them on, all mental. When the mind observes itself, past and future states become no more. The past has ceased to be. The future, though subject to cessation, is yet to be. The present is devoid of any identifiable characteristic such as shape, color, and so on. So we let it get bigger, 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 and then look to see what is attachment. What is this mental, conceptual experience of a feeling, of a thought, of a view, of, taking in the weight of even one attachment from someone and seeing them free. When we look to see, well, what is that? Where is that? That feels so unfathomable and unimaginable and even frightening and so gigantic we don't know how to let it into our experience. What is it that we're afraid of? No shape, no color, and so on. Not existing in any manner, the mind abides like space. So what is called attachment is a mere name with no referent at all. Place your mind in this as long as it abides. So we were imagining the Mount Meru. That might be a picture. That might be like a jumble of thoughts. But when we look to see what is actually there, do we find, there's no Polaroid snapshot in our mind. There's no existing thought that's not shifting like a river or a cloud. There's nothing that we can hold on to when we look for where is the Mount Meru of attachment. Getting it simple again, if I look for my attachment to sugar, I may have a physical experience of wanting, but if I look to see, is that in the body? No, it's a thought that affects the body. Where is it? Other than a moving, shifting, habitual pattern that wants to repeat itself and not be forgotten, but each individual wanting moment not there when I look for it. So let's spend some time in meditation, going right through these steps. And I'll give a few minutes for each step. So first, normal day. You're looking at your own mind, what's arising in this moment for you. You might be attached to a cup of coffee coming up, breakfast coming up, lunch coming up. You might be carrying something from the news. You might be carrying a thought about yourself in your family relationship or your work relationship or friend relationship. We have Aya Santachita coming, so we have varying views about what is right and wrong about ecology just now. So just identify something that's real for you in this moment. It can be very simple. And then consider what are the consequences if we maintain this attachment. So moving into a kind of Tonglen practice, just noticing how many beings are subject to the same attachment and taking on not those close to you who you dearly love, not necessarily strangers, but those you might denigrate in some way or see as on an opposite side. And breathing in, just lifting the weight of the attachment for them and taking it onto your shoulders, onto my shoulders, our shoulders. Then making that circle wider. All the different beings, human, animal, hungry ghosts, that are working with the same attachment, feeling the same weight, the same propensity. Just breathing that in. Now including all the different kinds of attachment, the pain of all of those in the desire realm that are attached to something, whether it's external or internal, objects or views or experiences. Just feel that in your mind and body. Feel it moving beyond your imagination to even comprehend. All of us in the desire realm are born into this realm because of habitual patterns that have been untransformed, allowed to grow larger and weightier. So all of a sudden you're carrying as huge as your imagination can make Mount Meru of attachment. And imagine all sentient beings absolutely free of attachment. So we're carrying that weight and we're seeing every kind of being liberated from the pain of that attachment and the consequences of that unattended to attachment. And heap on even more. Now turning our eyes directly at that experience of attachment, the Mount Meru of weight. What is it? Where is it? Your imagination created something. I know I can feel the weight as though I was carrying something throughout my body. Where is it then? What was created? Is there any inherently existing attachment that created, the extreme of imagination, the physical feeling, the internal feeling? Exactly where is that? It's like rotating your eyes back in your head to look at your mind. It seemed so real. Where is it? And we really check. Gee, it produced a feeling. It produced a physical change in my body experience. Where is this attachment? When I look for it, does it have a location? Is it long, tall, round, square? Does it have a color? Really searching. Is it only mental? Our bodies responded. Can we find it in the body? Do we know for ourselves that it's mental? Or do we think there is something in the body? Is it in the muscles? Is it in the organs? Is it at the top of the head? Is it in the feet? Is there a location? When we look for it, is there a location? You might say, oh, I feel it on my shoulders. All right, look at your shoulders. Is it on the bones? Is it in the muscles? Is it on the skin? Establishing that it is mind is really important. Think about when we were heaping on attachment and taking on attachment from all sentient beings. At any moment, fear could have arisen. This is too much for me. So exactly where is the cause of that fear? Is there actually anything to be afraid of? And with as much searching as possible, consider if it doesn't exist, the mind being like space. So this ruler of aspects of our lives, this attachment, is just a name. like sunny is a name, or sugar is a name. But in this case, when we search for it, there is no inherently existing object to attach the name to. So it's only a name. And as we gain more and more confidence, because we have really looked, then we can allow our mind to abide like space. And even if only partially convinced today, we can drop all conceptual thoughts in this moment and let our mind abide like space. So I'll do a short dedication. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn may it arise, where it is born may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. And we'll close the YouTube